I need a date for the party, come with me? Said the CEO to the black single dad. What happens next is shocking. The fluorescent lights of the 42nd floor hummed their familiar tune as Marcus Carter pushed his cleaning cart past the executive offices. It was 9:47 p.m., and the gleaming headquarters of Torres Industries had emptied hours ago, leaving only the ghosts of important decisions lingering in conference rooms. Marcus moved with practiced efficiency, every motion saving him precious minutes, time he could spend helping 10-year-old Layla with her homework, or reading her another chapter of Charlotte's Web. At 34, he'd mastered the art of invisible productivity, cleaning around the edges of other people's lives without disturbing them. 3 years ago, he'd been Marcus Carter, CPA, with a corner office and tailored suits. That was before Sarah's cancer, before medical bills consumed their savings, before he'd lost everything trying to buy more time with experimental treatments that couldn't save her. Now he was Marcus Carter, night janitor, invisible and grateful for steady work. He paused at the corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Chicago. Elena Torres's domain. At 29, she transformed her father's construction company into a multi-billion-dollar empire. Marcus had seen her exactly twice in 8 months, once in the elevator, once in the lobby. Both times he'd felt like furniture. Which made what happened next shocking. Marcus, right? He spun around, nearly knocking over his spray bottle. Elena Torres stood in her office doorway, having appeared silently. She'd changed from her usual business attire into dark jeans and a cream sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders instead of its typical severe bun. Ms. Torres, he stammered, straightening up. I didn't know you were still here. I can come back later. No, perfect timing actually. She stepped into the hallway, and Marcus noticed uncertainty flickering behind her usually confident brown eyes. Can I ask you something? And I need you to hear me out before you say no. Marcus's grip tightened on the mop handle. When rich people preface requests with disclaimers, whatever came next usually meant trouble for people like him. Okay, he said carefully. Elena glanced around the empty hallway, then looked directly at him. I need a date for the corporate gala next Friday. Come with me. The words hung in the air like a glitch in reality. Marcus blinked, certain he'd misheard. I'm sorry, what? The annual Torres Industries Gala. Black tie, 500 of Chicago's most influential people. I need you to be my date. Marcus felt like the floor had shifted. Ms. Torres, I think there's been some mistake. I'm the night janitor. I clean your office. Why would you? Because you're exactly what I need. The words came out sharp, then she softened her tone. I've watched you work. You're observant. You notice details. You're trustworthy. Trustworthy enough to empty waste baskets, maybe. Not trustworthy enough to. Marcus gestured at the impossible gap between their worlds. Elena stepped closer. 6 months ago, you found my grandmother's ring in my office wastebasket. Remember? He nodded. The antique emerald ring had been wrapped in tissue paper, clearly discarded by accident. Instead of pocketing it, God knew he could have used the money. He'd left it on her desk with a note. Found this. Thought you'd want it back. That ring belonged to my abuela. Worth about $80,000, but to me? Elena's voice softened. Priceless. You could have taken it. Sold it. No one would have known. But you didn't. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Anyone would have done the same. No, Elena said firmly. They wouldn't have. Trust me. The silence stretched between them, filled with the building's ventilation hum and distant traffic. I can't be your date to anything, Marcus finally said. I work nights so I can be with my daughter during the day. I don't own a tuxedo. I don't know corporate etiquette. I'd embarrass you. You underestimate yourself. And it's not about etiquette. It's about having someone I can trust in a room full of people I can't. Something in her voice made Marcus study her more carefully. Beneath the polished exterior, he glimpsed vulnerability that seemed at odds with her reputation as Chicago's most formidable young CEO. Why me? He asked quietly. Elena hesitated. Because you're invisible to them. Because you see things others miss. Because I need someone who won't betray me, and everyone else in my circle has a price. His phone buzzed. A text from Layla. Dad, finished my math homework. Can we practice the song for the school concert when you get home? Love you. 2 hearts. The message reminded him what actually mattered. His daughter, waiting up past bedtime to share small victories. The parent-teacher conference next week where he'd explain why he couldn't afford tutoring. The budget with no room for tuxedo rentals. I can't, he said, showing Elena the text. This is my priority. She's my priority. Elena read the message, and something shifted in her expression. How old? 10. Layla. She's brilliant. Wants to be a marine biologist, save the coral reefs. And her mother? Cancer. 3 years ago. The words still felt like swallowing glass. Elena was quiet for a long moment. My father built this company from nothing. By the time I was Layla's age, he was drowning in 18-hour days. But he never missed a school play. Never missed a birthday. He taught me that success means nothing if you sacrifice the people you love. Marcus was surprised by the personal revelation. The gala is Friday night, Elena continued. 3 hours maximum. I'll have a car pick you up and bring you home. The company covers everything, tuxedo, shoes, whatever you need. And, she paused. $5,000. Cash. For 3 hours. The number hit Marcus like a physical blow. $5,000. Layla's tutoring for a year, a security deposit on a better apartment, breathing room he hadn't had since everything fell apart. $5,000 to be your date to a party, he repeated slowly. To be someone I can trust in a room where trust is rare, Elena corrected. Marcus's mind raced. Too much money for too simple a request meant it wasn't simple. But Layla's teacher had called about falling grades, about needing help Marcus couldn't afford. Why is this so important to you? He whispered. Elena's jaw tightened, and Marcus glimpsed something that looked like fear. Let's say there are people at that gala who need to see I'm not alone. That I have allies they don't know about. Not really an answer, but her tone suggested it was all he'd get. Marcus thought about Layla's face when she'd seen him in his one good suit last month, how her eyes had lit up, how she'd said he looked like a prince. If I say yes, this is just one night. I'm not getting involved in whatever corporate drama you're dealing with. Elena nodded quickly. One night. That's all. Marcus closed his eyes, knowing he was about to make either the best or worst decision of his life. Okay. But I need to be home by midnight. No exceptions. And if this threatens me or my daughter, I'm out. Agreed. Elena extended her hand. When Marcus shook it, he noticed her firm grip, hands softer than his but carrying their own strength. Thank you, Marcus. You have no idea what this means. As she turned toward the elevator, Marcus called after her. What do I tell Layla? Elena paused, the first genuine smile he'd seen crossing her face. Tell her you're going to a party where her dad gets to be the hero. The elevator doors closed, leaving Marcus alone with his cart and a decision that felt like stepping off a cliff. He finished his rounds in a daze, mind spinning with questions and growing certainty that his carefully ordered world was about to be completely upended. When he got home at 11:30 p.m., Layla was asleep on the couch with her science textbook across her chest. Marcus gently carried her to bed, tucking the covers around her and brushing hair from her forehead. Sweet dreams, baby girl, he whispered. Daddy might be going to a party after all. But lying in his own bed later, staring at the ceiling's water stain, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling Elena Torres hadn't told him everything. The urgency in her voice, her glances at security cameras, the word allies instead of friends, it all pointed to something deeper than a corporate social event. Tomorrow he'd tell Layla her father was going somewhere requiring a tuxedo. In 6 days he'd enter a world he'd only observed from outside, armed with nothing but his wits and a promise he didn't understand. Elena Torres was either about to change his life forever, or destroy it completely. and he had no idea which scared him more. The black Mercedes that picked up Marcus at 7 sharp was worth more than he'd made in the past 2 years combined. The driver, James, had handed him a garment bag containing a perfectly fitted tuxedo that felt like wearing liquid silk. Marcus had stared at himself in the mirror of his tiny bathroom, barely recognizing the man looking back. "You look like a movie star, Daddy!" Layla had squealed, bouncing on her toes. She'd insisted on adjusting his bow tie, her small fingers surprisingly deft. "Are you going to dance with the pretty lady?" "It's just business, sweetheart," Marcus had said, though his reflection suggested otherwise. Now, standing outside the Palmer House Hotel as valets whisked away Bentleys and Maseratis, Marcus felt the illusion crumbling. The red carpet stretched before him like a path to another planet, flanked by photographers whose flashes turned the October evening into artificial daylight. "Mr. Carter?" Elena appeared beside him as if summoned, and Marcus's breath caught. She wore a midnight blue gown that seemed to capture starlight, her hair swept into an elegant updo. Diamond earrings caught the light, but it was her smile, warm and genuine, that made his heart skip. "You clean up well," she said, adjusting his cufflinks with familiar ease. "I feel like I'm wearing a costume," Marcus admitted. "Everyone here is wearing a costume," Elena murmured. "The trick is remembering what's underneath." The ballroom took Marcus's breath away. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across walls draped in ivory silk. The guest list read like a who's who of Chicago power, politicians, tech moguls, real estate titans, old money families whose names graced museum wings. As they moved through the crowd, Marcus became aware of the social choreography. Men discussed mergers over cocktails while their wives exchanged pleasantries that carried unspoken rivalries. Elena navigated it effortlessly, but Marcus noticed her eyes constantly swept the room with security guard intensity. "Elena, darling!" a voice boomed across their path. "You look absolutely radiant tonight." Marcus turned to see a man approaching, tall, silver-haired, with a confident smile that belonged on campaign posters. His tuxedo was perfectly tailored, his handshake firm when Elena reluctantly introduced him. "Marcus Carter, meet Victor Hale, our Vice President of Strategic Development," Elena said, her voice carefully neutral. "Pleasure," Victor said, his blue eyes assessing Marcus with uncomfortable intensity. "How do you know our brilliant CEO?" "We work together," Marcus replied, technically true. Victor's smile widened but didn't reach his eyes. "How fascinating. What department?" Marcus felt Elena's hand tighten on his arm. "Marcus consults on efficiency optimization," she interjected smoothly. "Ah, consultant." Victor's tone suggested he'd encountered many consultants, few impressive. "Well, Elena certainly knows how to pick her collaborators." The pause before collaborators felt deliberate, loaded with meaning Marcus couldn't grasp. Elena's jaw tightened fractionally. "If you'll excuse us, Victor, we were heading to our table," Elena said. "Of course. Enjoy your evening." Victor's gaze lingered on Marcus. "I'm sure we'll chat more later." Throughout dinner, courses that were more art than food, Marcus watched Elena work the table. She discussed urban development with passion, navigated political small talk with diplomatic skill. But every few minutes, her eyes drifted to wherever Victor was holding court. "You're watching him," Marcus said during the salad course. Elena's fork paused. "Watching who?" "Victor. You track his movements like you're expecting him to disappear." Elena's composure slipped, revealing something like fear. "Victor is ambitious. It pays to keep track of ambitious people." But Marcus had spent years reading patterns others missed. Elena wasn't just keeping track, she was hunting. As the evening progressed, Marcus saw past the glamorous facade. Conversations had edges. Smiles carried warnings. He watched Elena deflect probing questions, noticed how certain guests avoided others, observed subtle power plays between courses. And through it all, Victor worked the room like a politician, but whenever his path crossed Elena's, the temperature dropped 10 degrees. When they prepared to leave, Victor intercepted them near coat check. "Leaving so early?" he asked. I was hoping to learn more about Marcus's consulting work. Another time, Elena said coolly. Victor's smile was predatory. Of course. Family man, I assume? Children are such a blessing. And such a responsibility. The comment felt like a threat. Marcus felt Elena's hand tense on his arm, saw something dangerous flash in her eyes. As their car pulled away, Marcus finally broke the silence. What was that really about? Elena stared out at streaming city lights. What do you mean? Don't. I may be the janitor, but I'm not stupid. You brought me to watch Victor Hale. Why? Elena turned to face him, vulnerable in the dim light. You're right. But not here. Not yet. Then when? She was quiet until they reached his building. Tomorrow night. After your shift. There's something I need to show you about Victor that could change everything. Marcus climbed out still wearing the transformative tuxedo. As the Mercedes disappeared, he stood on his modest neighborhood sidewalk, feeling like Cinderella after midnight. Except unlike the fairy tale, this felt like just the beginning. The next evening, Marcus arrived at Torres Industries with more questions than answers. Elena had texted, "Conference room B, 42nd floor, 10 p.m. Come alone." The building felt different knowing he wasn't there just to clean, more ominous, as if shadows held secrets. Elena was waiting, but she looked nothing like the polished CEO from the gala. Hair in a messy ponytail, wearing jeans and a Northwestern sweatshirt, dark circles under her eyes. Financial documents covered the mahogany table like evidence in a crime scene. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I wasn't sure you would." Marcus remained standing, eyeing the papers warily. "You said you'd explain? This looks like work, not explanation." Elena rubbed her temples, suddenly looking older than 29. "You're right. I owe you the truth." She took a deep breath. "I think Victor Hale is stealing from the company. Millions of dollars. And I need your help to prove it." Marcus felt cold water hit him. He'd expected corporate politics, not this. "You think I'm going to help investigate embezzlement? Are you insane? Hear me out." "No." Marcus turned toward the door. "I'm going home to my daughter." "Marcus, wait." Elena's voice cracked. "Please. 5 minutes." Something in her tone made him pause. When he turned back, she was staring at the documents like they contained her worst fears. 6 months ago, I started noticing discrepancies. Elena began steadily but strained. Small at first. Vendor payments that seemed high. Consulting fees for services I couldn't track. She pulled out a highlighted spreadsheet. Then amounts got larger. Construction contracts for projects that never broke ground. Equipment purchases for non-existent job sites. When I investigated, I hit dead ends. Paperwork was perfect, signatures legitimate, but something felt wrong. Marcus approached despite himself, accounting instincts kicking in. The numbers were suspicious. Too round, too neat, too conveniently spread to avoid audit flags. "So you suspect Victor because he's the only person with access to approve these payments. And because Rebecca Morrison from First National told me Victor's been making large cash deposits." "Very large." Marcus felt ice in his stomach. "How large?" $200,000 in the past month alone. Marcus sank into the chair, mind calculating. If Victor had been skimming for months, they were talking millions in stolen funds. "Elena, this is FBI territory. You need lawyers, forensic accountants, people who handle this properly. I can't trust anyone else." Elena's composure cracked, revealing hidden fear. "Victor has allies on the board. Friends in the mayor's office. If I move too quickly, if I'm wrong about details, he'll destroy me. If you're right, he'll destroy you anyway," Marcus finished. Elena nodded miserably. "Someone broke into my apartment last week. Nothing taken, but my home office was searched. My personal laptop had been accessed. Whoever did it knew exactly what they were looking for." Marcus felt walls closing in. "You think Victor? I think Victor knows I'm suspicious." Which means I'm running out of time. Elena leaned forward desperately. Marcus, I need someone I can trust absolutely. Someone with skills to analyze these records properly. Someone Victor would never suspect. Someone invisible, Marcus said quietly, understanding flooding through him. Yes. You spent years as a CPA. You know how to read financial statements, spot irregularities, follow money trails. And Victor saw you at the gala as exactly what you appeared, my date for the evening. Nothing more. Marcus stared at documents spread before them, mind racing. The accountant in him wanted to dive into numbers, trace every suspicious transaction. But the father screamed warnings about what this could cost. If I help you and we're wrong, Victor sues us into oblivion, Marcus said slowly. If we're right and he finds out, he's already proven he'll break laws to protect himself. Either way, I could lose everything. My job, my apartment, maybe even. The thought of losing custody of Layla made his chest tight. I know what I'm asking, Elena said quietly. I know the risks. But Marcus, if Victor is stealing millions, he won't stop. He'll get bolder, take more, until there's nothing left. This company employs 12,000 people. Their livelihoods, their families, they all depend on Torres Industries staying strong. She pulled out an employee roster. Third page, accounting department. Janet Williams, single mother of 2. Been with us 8 years. If this company fails, where does she go? Marcus found Janet's name, along with hundreds of others. People like him, people like he used to be. People whose lives would shatter if Victor's greed brought down Torres Industries. You're manipulating me, he said without anger. I'm appealing to who you are, Elena corrected. The man who returned an $80,000 ring. The man who sacrificed his career to care for his dying wife. The man who works nights so his daughter never comes home to an empty house. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling decision weight settling on his shoulders. What exactly are you asking me to do? Help me build an airtight case. Go through these records, find patterns, trace the money. Give me evidence so solid that even Victor's allies can't ignore it. And if we find that evidence? Elena's expression hardened. Then we take Victor Hale down before he destroys everything my father built. Marcus looked at documents again, then at Elena's determined face. He thought about Layla asleep at home, about tutoring she needed, opportunities he couldn't give her, the future always just out of reach. But he also thought about Janet Williams and 11,999 other employees who trusted Elena Torres to protect their jobs. If I do this, Marcus said finally, we do it my way. Careful. Methodical. No cutting corners, no assumptions. If evidence isn't rock solid, we walk away. Relief flooded Elena's face. Agreed. And if this threatens Layla's safety or my custody, I'm out. No arguments. Understood. Marcus reached for the first document. As his fingers touched paper, he felt like he was crossing a line he couldn't uncross. One more thing, he said, looking up. When this is over, whether we nail Victor or not, I want the truth about why you really chose me. Not the story about trustworthiness. The real reason? Elena held his gaze. When this is over, she said quietly, I'll tell you everything. Marcus nodded and opened the first file. As numbers and dates swam before his eyes, he couldn't shake the feeling he'd agreed to walk into a war zone armed with nothing but a calculator and Elena Torres's word that she was one of the good guys. Outside, Chicago glittered in darkness, beautiful and indifferent to the battle about to unfold on the 42nd floor. Marcus had been secretly analyzing Victor's financial records for 3 days when his phone rang at 2:30 p.m., jarring him awake from his post-work nap. The caller ID showed Lincoln Elementary School, and his heart jumped to worst-case scenarios. Mr. Carter? This is Principal Morrison. I'm calling about Layla. Is she hurt? Marcus sat up quickly. No, nothing like that. But I need to speak with you about her academic performance. Are you available this afternoon? Marcus glanced at his clock. 4 hours before his shift started, barely enough time for the meeting and dinner with Layla. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Principal Morrison greeted him in her office with a concerned smile. Layla's academic file was spread across her desk like evidence in a trial. Thank you for coming so quickly. I wanted to discuss concerns about Layla's recent performance. She turned papers toward him, revealing a story Marcus hadn't seen coming. Math tests dropped from A's to C's. Science projects submitted late. A reading assignment marked incomplete in red ink. I don't understand, Marcus said, studying grades with growing confusion. She tells me she's doing fine. Every night she shows me completed homework. That's part of what concerns me. Principal Morrison leaned forward with practiced compassion. Layla is completing assignments, but quality has declined significantly. Her attention seems scattered. During discussions, she appears distracted, almost anxious. The word hit Marcus like a punch. Anxious about what? That's what I hoped you could tell me. Has there been any significant change at home recently? New stressors, schedule changes, anything affecting her? Marcus's mind went to the past week. Late nights poring over Victor's records, stress of keeping Elena's secret, constantly checking over his shoulder. Had Layla noticed? Of course she had. Kids always noticed more than adults realized. There have been some work complications, Marcus admitted carefully. Principal Morrison nodded knowingly. Single parenting is incredibly challenging, Mr. Carter. You're doing admirably, but I think Layla would benefit from additional academic support. I'd like to recommend tutoring. How much? Marcus interrupted, dreading the answer. The learning center we partner with charges $200 per session. For Layla's needs, I'd suggest twice weekly sessions for at least 2 months. So approximately $1,600 to start. $1,600. The number echoed as Marcus walked home, Layla's hand in his. She'd been quiet during their usual after-school snack, picking at apple slices instead of devouring them while chattering about her day. Ladybug, Marcus said as they climbed stairs to their apartment. Principal Morrison says you've been having trouble in school. Want to talk about it? Layla's shoulders hunched defensively. I'm fine, Daddy. Your math grade says otherwise. They entered their small apartment. Layla dropped her backpack and flopped onto the couch with theatrical exhaustion. Math is stupid, she announced. Who needs fractions anyway? Marcus sat beside her, recognizing deflection. Since when do you think math is stupid? Last month you were excited about calculating fish tank volumes at the aquarium. Layla was quiet, picking at a loose thread. Are we poor, Daddy? The question hit Marcus in the chest. Why would you ask that? Because Emma's mom said her dad is taking her to Disney World for Christmas, and she asked what we're doing, and I realized we've never taken a vacation. And at the gala, when you wore that fancy suit, you looked like the dads in Emma's neighborhood, but then you came home here and... She gestured around their modest apartment. I wondered if we're poor and you don't want to tell me. Marcus felt his heart breaking. How was he supposed to explain that they weren't poor? They were grateful. Grateful for steady work, health insurance, a roof over their heads. We're not poor, sweetheart. We just budget carefully. Is that why you've been staying up late with work stuff? I hear you typing after I go to bed. Marcus froze. You hear that? The walls are thin, Daddy. And sometimes you talk to yourself when you're frustrated. Like when you used to help Mommy with her medical bills. Too perceptive, too accurate. Marcus realized Layla had been absorbing his stress like a sponge. No wonder her grades were slipping. That evening, while Layla worked on homework, Marcus opened his laptop and continued examining Victor's transactions. But every few minutes he found himself distracted by his daughter's presence. How she chewed her pencil when stuck on problems. How she hummed while reading, the trust in her eyes when she asked for help. Elena had given him copies of Victor's expense reports, vendor contracts, payment authorizations. The deeper Marcus dug, the clearer the pattern became. Victor was a master of financial sleight of hand, moving money through shell companies, creating invoices for services never rendered, skimming from legitimate contracts. Sophisticated, planned, absolutely illegal. By midnight, Marcus had identified 40 suspicious transactions totaling over $3 million. Evidence was damning, but building a court-worthy case would take weeks of detailed analysis. His phone buzzed with Elena's text, "How's it going? Finding anything?" Marcus typed back, "We need to talk. Tomorrow night." "Bad news?" "Worse than you thought." Around 1 a.m., Marcus closed his laptop and checked on Layla. She was fast asleep, clutching her stuffed dolphin, a gift from Sarah during her final hospital stay. Looking at his daughter's peaceful face, Marcus felt impossible situation weight pressing down like a physical force. To save Torres Industries and protect 12,000 jobs, he needed to continue investigating Victor's crimes. But doing so meant risking everything: his job, his stability, possibly even his daughter's well-being. Victor had already proven willingness to break into Elena's apartment. What would he do if he discovered Marcus was building a case against him? The tutoring Layla needed would cost $1,600 he didn't have. Elena's investigation offered $5,000, plus potentially a better future if they succeeded. But it also offered retaliation possibilities from a man who'd already stolen millions and shown escalation willingness. Marcus stood in his daughter's doorway, torn between the father he needed to be and the man Elena needed him to become. Tomorrow, he'd choose between keeping his head down and protecting the small, safe world he'd built for Layla, or risking everything to stop a criminal stealing from thousands of families like his own. In the distance, sirens wailed through Chicago night, someone else's emergency. Marcus closed Layla's door softly and prepared for another sleepless night, knowing that whatever choice he made, there was no going back. The investigation was no longer just about Victor Hale's crimes. It had become about the kind of father Marcus wanted to be, the kind of man he wanted his daughter to remember. For the next 2 weeks, Marcus's life split into two distinct worlds. During the day, he was Layla's devoted father, helping with homework, making lunches, pretending everything was normal while watching her grades slowly improve with his extra attention. At night, after tucking her in and ensuring Mrs. Patterson was settled, he became Elena's partner in uncovering Victor's elaborate financial crimes. Conference Room B had become their war room. Elena would arrive around 10 p.m. with Chinese takeout or pizza, and they'd spread documents across the table like pieces of a massive puzzle. Marcus had initially insisted on professional distance, but Elena's genuine gratitude and surprising sense of humor gradually wore down his defenses. "Look at this," Marcus said on their 5th night together, pointing to payments on his laptop screen. Vector Construction Solutions received 4 payments last month, each for exactly $47,500. Just under the $50,000 threshold requiring additional board approval. Elena leaned over his shoulder to examine the screen, and Marcus caught her familiar perfume, something clean and sophisticated he'd started looking forward to. Vector Construction. I've never heard of them. Marcus pulled up another window. That's the beautiful part. They don't exist. The address listed is a vacant lot in Gary, Indiana. The business license number belongs to a flower shop that closed in 2019. So Victor created a fake company to funnel money to himself? Gets better. Marcus clicked through more screens, old accounting instincts fully engaged. Vector isn't alone. I've found at least 12 shell companies, all receiving regular payments, all with addresses that lead nowhere. He's been running this scheme for over 2 years. Elena sank into the chair beside him. How much total? So far? $8.7 million. And I'm only halfway through. They sat in silence, Victor's theft magnitude settling between them. Elena rubbed her temples, exhaustion evident. You know, Marcus said gently, when I first met you, I thought you never got tired. You always seemed so invincible. Elena laughed, but it sounded hollow. Smoke and mirrors. Most days I feel like I'm barely keeping my head above water. Do you know what it's like being the youngest CEO in company history? Every decision gets scrutinized, every mistake magnified. People constantly wait for me to fail so they can say I only got the job because of my last name. Is that true? Did you only get the job because of your father? Partly, Elena admitted with refreshing honesty. But I also have an MBA from Wharton, 5 years in urban development, and a track record of turning struggling projects profitable. The name got me in the door. Everything else I earned. Marcus found himself studying her profile, noticing details he missed before. The small scar above her left eyebrow. How she unconsciously twisted her father's ring when thinking. How her tough executive mask disappeared when she talked about things that mattered. What about you? Elena asked, catching him staring. What was life like before all this? Marcus felt heat in his cheeks. Before Sarah got sick? Normal, I guess. We had a house in Naperville, 2 cars, a retirement plan. I worked downtown, specialized in forensic accounting. Sarah taught 3rd grade. We tried for years to have kids before Layla came along. Forensic accounting, Elena repeated thoughtfully. That explains why you're so good at following these money trails. I used to hunt down embezzlement cases for corporate clients. Ironic, right? Marcus pulled up another suspicious transaction. Look, Brighton Consulting Services. They allegedly provided strategic analysis for our Seattle expansion. Except our Seattle expansion was cancelled 8 months ago. Elena moved closer to examine the screen, close enough that Marcus could see gold flecks in her brown eyes. Victor signed off on this payment personally. $300,000 for services never rendered. He's getting sloppy. Or desperate. Marcus scrolled through more documents. Amounts are getting larger, fake companies more obvious. Like he's trying to grab as much as possible before something happens. Before what? Before someone like you gets suspicious enough to investigate. Elena was quiet, then said softly, Marcus, I need an honest answer. Do you think Victor knows we're looking into this? The question Marcus had been dreading. I think Victor survived this long by being paranoid. He's probably noticed you staying late, asking questions. And at the gala. What about the gala? The way he looked at me. Like he was trying to place me somewhere. And that comment about children being a responsibility, it felt like a warning. Elena's face went pale. You think he's researched you? I think a man who's stolen almost $9 million doesn't leave loose ends untied. As if summoned, Elena's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Working late again, Elena? Remember, all work and no play. She showed Marcus the message, her hand trembling slightly. He's watching us. Marcus felt ice in his veins. How long have you been getting messages like this? 3 days. Always from different numbers. Always when I'm here late. Elena, we need to be more careful. If Victor suspects, then we're already in danger. Elena finished. Which means we need to move faster, not slower. Marcus looked at the woman beside him, brilliant, determined, more vulnerable than she wanted to admit. Somewhere in the past 2 weeks, his feelings had shifted from reluctant cooperation to genuine partnership. He found himself looking forward to their late-night sessions, not just for the intellectual challenge, but for Elena's company. Her quick wit, her stories about growing up in her father's business, the way she listened when he talked about Layla. There's something else, Marcus said quietly. The tutoring Layla needs? It costs $1,600. Money I don't have. Elena turned to face him fully. The $5,000 I promise you isn't enough if this goes wrong. If Victor retaliates, if I lose my job, if he finds a way to hurt Layla. Marcus ran hands through his hair. I keep telling myself I'm doing this for the right reasons, but what if I'm just being selfish? What if I'm risking my daughter's stability for money? Elena was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. You know what I see when I look at you, Marcus? A guy in over his head? A man who loved his wife so much he bankrupted himself trying to save her. A father who works all night so his daughter never comes home alone. Someone who finds stolen rings and returns them, who notices when people are hurting, who's willing to risk everything to protect strangers he'll never meet. Elena's voice was soft but certain. You're not being selfish. You're being human. Before Marcus could respond, Elena's phone rang. Victor's name appeared on the screen. At 11:30 at night? Marcus whispered. Elena stared at the phone, letting it ring. When it stopped, she looked at Marcus with fear in her eyes. He knows, she said simply. Marcus gathered documents spread across the table, hands moving with sudden urgency. We need to get this evidence somewhere safe. Tonight. Already done. Everything's backed up to a secure server Victor can't access. Elena, if he's calling this late, if he's watching the building. I know. Elena stood, her business mask sliding back into place. Which means we're running out of time to nail him before he nails us. As they prepared to leave, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling they'd crossed an invisible line tonight. Victor knew they were investigating him, which meant the game had fundamentally changed. War had been declared, and Marcus Carter was about to discover just how far Victor Hale would go to protect his stolen millions. Marcus knew something was wrong the moment he arrived at Torres Industries Monday evening. Instead of the usual skeleton crew, the lobby buzzed with unusual activity. 2 men in expensive suits flanked the elevator bank, and building security had doubled. When Marcus badged in, the guard held eye contact longer than usual. Evening, Mr. Carter, the guard said carefully. Ms. Rodriguez from HR wants to see you before you start your shift. Conference room A. Marcus's blood turned cold. In 8 months, HR had never requested a meeting. He made his way to the elevator, hyper-aware of the suited men who watched his progress. Federal agents, his instincts whispered. Conference room A had stark white walls and fluorescent lighting that made everyone look ill. Carmen Rodriguez sat at the table with 2 other people Marcus didn't recognize, a severe woman in a navy blazer and a man whose bearing screamed law enforcement. Marcus, please sit, Carmen said, her usual warmth replaced by corporate formality. This is Detective Sarah Walsh from Chicago PD Financial Crimes Unit, and Agent Michael Foster from the FBI. Marcus felt the floor drop out. What's this about? Detective Walsh opened a folder and spread documents across the table. Mr. Carter, we're investigating allegations of financial impropriety involving your custodial duties here at Torres Industries. Financial impropriety? Marcus stared at the papers. Purchase orders, vendor receipts, payment authorizations. All bearing his employee ID number. I don't understand. I empty trash cans and vacuum carpets. I don't handle money. According to these records, Agent Foster said flatly, you've been approving purchases for cleaning supplies and equipment totaling over $50,000 in 6 months. Supplies never delivered, equipment never received. Marcus's heart hammered. That's impossible. I don't have authorization to approve anything. I don't even have access to the purchasing system. Detective Walsh turned a document toward him. This is your employee ID, correct? And this appears to be your digital signature on these purchase orders. Marcus stared in horror. His ID number was correct, but the signature was wrong, close enough to pass casual inspection, but not his actual signature. Someone had forged his authorization on dozens of fraudulent purchase orders. I didn't sign these, Marcus said firmly. Someone is setting me up. That's a serious accusation, Agent Foster replied. Who would want to frame you, Mr. Carter? Before Marcus could answer, the conference room door opened and Elena Torres walked in, her presence immediately shifting the room's energy. She wore full CO armor, a charcoal gray suit that projected authority, her hair pulled back severely, her expression ice-cold professional. Detectives Agent Foster, she said, nodding to each. I understand you're questioning one of my employees. Ms. Torres, Detective Walsh replied. We're investigating allegations that Mr. Carter has been involved in fraudulent purchasing schemes. Elena's eyebrows rose in perfectly performed surprise. Marcus Carter? That's absurd. Detective, I personally review all major purchases for this company. Mr. Carter is a custodial employee. He has no access to our purchasing systems, no authorization to approve expenditures, and frankly, no reason to risk his employment on petty theft. The evidence suggests otherwise, Agent Foster said, gesturing to documents. Elena picked up the papers, examining them with sharp eyes of someone who'd built a business empire. After a moment, she looked up with the kind of smile that had probably terrified competitors across multiple industries. Agent Foster, how long have you been investigating corporate fraud? 15 years. Foster replied, wondering where this was headed. Then you should recognize planted evidence when you see it. Elena's voice carried authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. These signatures are forgeries. The purchase orders reference cleaning supplies we don't use. Our entire facility is maintained through an exclusive contract with Pristine Professional Services. Any first-year investigator could verify that with a single phone call. Detective Walsh frowned, reaching for documents. Are you saying someone deliberately framed Mr. Carter? I'm saying someone is trying very hard to discredit a loyal employee, and I'd like to know why. Elena's gaze swept the room meaningfully. I'd also like to know who brought these obviously fabricated charges to your attention. The federal agents exchanged glances. We received an anonymous tip. Agent Foster admitted. How convenient. Elena's tone could have cut glass. Detectives, you've been played. Marcus Carter is guilty of nothing more than working hard to support his daughter. If you want to investigate real financial crimes at Torres Industries, I suggest you look elsewhere. After the investigators left, Marcus and Elena sat alone in the conference room. The silence stretched heavy with unspoken questions. You could have told them about Victor, Marcus said finally. With what evidence? Spreadsheets and suspicions? Victor's had weeks to prepare. Those agents will find exactly what he wants them to find, a clean paper trail and a scapegoat janitor with financial troubles. Marcus felt walls closing in. He knows. About us, about the investigation, everything. Yes. He had those documents forged, called in the tip, tried to get me arrested. Yes. Elena, this isn't corporate rivalry anymore. This is war. Elena finished quietly. I know. Marcus stood, pacing to the window. 42 floors below, Chicago glittered obliviously. He's not just stealing money. He's willing to destroy innocent people to protect himself. Which is why we have to stop him. Marcus turned back to Elena, seeing her clearly for the first time in weeks. Not as the powerful CEO who'd recruited him, not as the vulnerable woman sharing late-night takeout, but as someone equally trapped in Victor's web. What's our next move? He asked. Elena smiled, and for the first time since he'd known her, it looked predatory. We give Victor exactly what he wants. We make him think his little frame job worked. Meaning? Meaning tomorrow, you're getting suspended pending investigation. Publicly, visibly, with maximum embarrassment. And while everyone's watching the show, we'll be gathering evidence that will bury Victor Hale forever. Marcus nodded slowly, understanding the strategy even as his stomach churned at the thought of public humiliation. And if this backfires? Elena reached across the table and took his hand, her fingers warm against his. Then we go down fighting. Together. As Marcus walked home through the October night, Victor's trap closing around him like a noose, he realized the stakes had changed completely. This was no longer about money or justice or even protecting Torres Industries. This was about survival. And he was no longer fighting alone. Marcus barely slept that night. Every sound in the hallway made him tense, every car engine outside sent his heart racing. By morning, exhaustion hung on him like a weight, but it was nothing compared to the crushing realization that had been building since Victor's trap was sprung. He'd been played. Used. And the worst part was that he'd walked into it willingly. After dropping Layla at school, she noticed his mood but hadn't pressed, just squeezed his hand extra tight. Marcus found himself standing outside Torres Industries at 3 p.m., hours before his suspended shift would have started. He needed answers, and he needed them now. Elena's assistant tried to stop him at the 42nd floor, but Marcus walked past her with the determination that comes from having nothing left to lose. Ma'am, I'm sorry, the assistant called. It's fine, Sarah, Elena said from her office doorway. I was expecting him. Marcus stepped into Elena's office and closed the door with more force than necessary. Elena stood behind her desk, still in her power suit from whatever meetings had filled her day, but her confident posture couldn't hide the wariness in her eyes. "We need to talk," Marcus said without preamble. "Of course. About last night, about Victor's move. About why you really chose me." Marcus moved closer to her desk, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "I've had 12 hours to think about this, Elena. To really think. And none of it makes sense." Elena's hands stilled on the papers she'd been organizing. "What do you mean? You're Elena Torres. You could have hired forensic accountants. You could have brought in corporate security, federal investigators, anyone. Instead, you chose the night janitor." Marcus leaned forward, placing his hands flat on her desk. "Why? I told you. I needed someone I could trust." "Bullshit." The word came out harder than Marcus intended, but he was beyond caring about professional courtesy. "You needed someone Victor would underestimate. Someone so far beneath his notice that he'd never see the threat coming. You needed a decoy." Elena's face went pale, confirming what Marcus had suspected since dawn. "That's what this was about, wasn't it?" Marcus continued, his voice rising. "Poor Marcus Carter, the broken-down janitor with a sob story about his dead wife and struggling daughter. Perfect cover for your real investigation. Victor would never suspect the help of being smart enough to pose a threat. Marcus, how long did it take you to research me? To learn about Sarah's cancer, about my financial problems, about exactly which buttons to push to get me to say yes?" Marcus felt 3 weeks of carefully suppressed doubt exploding into fury. "The ring story was convenient timing, wasn't it? You knew I'd found it, knew I'd returned it, knew it would make me seem trustworthy." Elena flinched as if he'd slapped her. "It wasn't like that." "Then tell me what it was like." Marcus slammed his hand on the desk, causing a framed photo of Elena with her father to jump. "Tell me the truth for once, instead of whatever version you think will keep me cooperating." Elena stared at him for a long moment, and Marcus saw the exact moment her composure cracked completely. Her shoulders sagged, the fight going out of her all at once. "You're right," she said quietly, sinking into her chair. "About all of it." The admission hit Marcus harder than he'd expected. Even though he'd known, hearing her confirm it felt like losing something precious. Elena continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "When I first suspected Victor was stealing, I knew I needed help. But everyone in my circle, every accountant, every lawyer, every board member, they all have relationships with Victor. Friendships, business deals, favors owed. I couldn't risk trusting any of them. So you decided to use the janitor. So I decided to find someone completely outside Victor's sphere of influence. Someone with the skills I needed but no reason to protect him." Elena looked up at Marcus, tears threatening. "I researched the entire custodial staff. Your background, your qualifications, your financial situation. You were perfect. Perfect because I was desperate. Perfect because you were invisible to people like Victor. Because you had integrity I could count on. Because your circumstances meant you'd be motivated to help." Elena's voice grew stronger. "Yes, Marcus. I chose you because I thought I could manipulate you. I'm not proud of it, but I won't lie about it anymore." Marcus turned away, staring out at the Chicago skyline. The $5,000. The tuxedo. Playing up to my feelings about Layla needing tutoring. All calculated. Initially, yes. And the gala? Parading me around as your date while you really wanted me to observe Victor? Yes. Marcus felt hollow, used in a way that cut deeper than any financial betrayal. What about the late nights? The personal stories, the chemistry I thought was developing between us? Was that manipulation too? Elena was quiet for so long that Marcus finally turned back to look at her. Tears were flowing freely down her cheeks now, ruining her carefully applied makeup. "No," she whispered. "That was real. All of it. How am I supposed to believe anything you say now?" Elena stood up, moving around her desk until she was directly in front of him. "Because 3 weeks ago, you were a means to an end. A tool I could use to expose Victor. But somewhere between that first night in conference room B and last night when you asked if we could trust each other, you stopped being a tool and became. She struggled for words. You became someone I care about. Someone I respect. Someone you what? Someone I'm falling in love with. The words came out in a rush, raw and unguarded. I know how that sounds after everything I just admitted. I know you have every right to hate me. But Marcus, these past weeks, working with you, watching you puzzle through Victor's schemes, seeing how you talk about Layla, how you still honor Sarah's memory, you're not the broken man I thought I was hiring. You're the strongest person I've ever met. Marcus stared at her, seeing past the tears and smeared mascara to something that looked like truth. Elena, I know I don't deserve your trust anymore. I know I manipulated you, used your circumstances against you. But what we've found about Victor, it's real. The threat to this company, to 12,000 employees, to families like yours, that's all real. And I can't stop him without you. Marcus felt his anger wavering, replaced by something more complicated. You lied to me. I did. You used my dead wife's memory to motivate me. Yes. You researched my daughter, my financial problems, everything that would make me vulnerable. I did all of that. Elena's voice was steady now, accepting his accusations without defense. But Marcus, the man I've gotten to know these past weeks, your brilliance, your integrity, your courage, none of that was in my research. That was discovering who you really are. Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something he hadn't expected. Vulnerability. Fear. And underneath it all, something that looked remarkably like love. Victor knows about us, Marcus said finally. He tried to have me arrested. What's his next move? I don't know. But whatever it is, it'll be worse than a framed job. Marcus nodded slowly, feeling pieces of his anger rearranging themselves into something like resolve. Then we'd better finish what we started. Elena's face lit up with hope. You'll stay? Even after everything I told you? Marcus thought about Layla, about Victor's veiled threats, about 12,000 employees who didn't know their jobs were at risk. About the woman standing in front of him who'd been honest enough to destroy her own credibility rather than continue lying. I'll stay, he said. But from now on we're partners. Equal partners. No more manipulation, no more lies, no more treating me like a pawn. Elena nodded eagerly. Partners. And when this is over, we're going to have a very long conversation about what happens next. I'd like that, Elena said softly. As Marcus prepared to leave, Elena called his name. Marcus? Thank you. For trusting me even after I gave you every reason not to. Walking home, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in 3 years, hope mixed with terror in equal measure. Elena Torres had lied to him, used him, manipulated his circumstances to serve her needs. She'd also shown him a truth about himself he'd forgotten, that he was more than just a survivor, more than just Layla's father, more than just a man trying to keep his head above water. He was someone worth fighting for. And maybe, just maybe, someone worth loving. Marcus was walking Layla to school Thursday morning when he first noticed the black SUV. It appeared behind them as they left their apartment building, maintained steady distance for 3 blocks, then disappeared when they reached Lincoln Elementary. Probably nothing, Marcus told himself, but his instincts suggested otherwise. The same SUV was waiting outside the school when he picked Layla up that afternoon. Daddy, why does that car keep following us? Layla asked with the unsettling perceptiveness of a 10-year-old. Marcus's blood chilled. What do you mean, sweetheart? The black car. It was there this morning, and now it's here again. The man inside has been taking pictures. Marcus looked where Layla was pointing and saw her observation confirmed. A man in the driver's seat lowered a camera with a telephoto lens, started the engine, and drove away without hurry. The message was clear: we see you, we're watching, we know where your daughter goes to school. That evening, after ensuring Layla was safely with Mrs. Patterson, Marcus arrived at Torres Industries to find Elena pacing her office like a caged animal. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, her blazer wrinkled. "Victor's escalating," she said without preamble. "3 board members called today asking concerned questions about my judgment. Suddenly there are whispers about my leadership, my decision-making, my emotional stability. He's building a case against you, while we're building one against him. It's a race now." Elena stopped pacing. "How close are we to having enough evidence?" "Close. Maybe 2 more days." Marcus pulled out his laptop, but something felt wrong. "Elena, Victor had someone following me and Layla today. Taking photographs." Elena's face went white. "What?" Marcus described the black SUV, the man with the camera, Layla's innocent observations about being watched. With each detail, Elena's expression grew more horrified. "He's targeting your daughter to get to you," she said, voice barely controlled. "Which means we're out of time." Marcus closed his laptop. "I have to stop. I have to walk away before." Elena's phone rang, cutting off his words. Victor Hale's name appeared on the screen like a curse. "Don't answer it," Marcus said quickly. "I have to. If I don't, he'll know we're running scared." Elena steadied herself and accepted the call. "Victor. Working late? As are you, I see." Victor's voice came through the speaker, smooth and confident. "And with your consulting friend again. Marcus, isn't it?" Elena's eyes met Marcus's. Victor knew exactly where they were, probably knew exactly what they were doing. "What do you want, Victor?" "I want to have a conversation with Marcus. Man to man. There are some things he should know before he gets in any deeper. Marcus isn't available for." "Actually," Marcus said, surprising both Elena and himself, "I'll talk to him." 5 minutes later, Victor appeared in Elena's office doorway like a predator who'd cornered his prey. He wore a casual smile, but his eyes held cold calculation of someone who'd already won the game. "Marcus, my friend," Victor said, settling into a chair as if he owned the place. "We need to discuss your future." "I'm listening." Victor pulled out a manila folder, placing it on the desk between them. "Inside this folder is some very interesting information about you. Your financial history, your employment record, your personal challenges." Marcus felt his chest tighten. "Get to the point." "The point is that desperate men sometimes make poor decisions. Take you, for instance. A single father, drowning in debt, working minimum wage to support a daughter who needs expensive tutoring." Victor's smile widened. "It would be easy to believe such a man might be tempted by opportunities for easy money. Corporate theft, perhaps. Embezzlement. We've been through this," Elena interjected. "The evidence against Marcus was fabricated." "Was it?" Victor opened the folder, revealing photographs that made Marcus's blood freeze. Pictures of him entering Torres Industries after hours. Pictures of him and Elena in conference room B. Pictures of cash transactions at his bank, deposits he never made, amounts suggesting regular payments for illegal services. "These photos tell a different story," Victor continued conversationally. "They suggest Marcus Carter has been receiving payments for providing inside information about Torres Industries' security, schedules, and operations. Industrial espionage, if you will." Marcus stared at the fabricated evidence with growing horror. The bank deposits were clearly photoshopped, but they looked real enough to fool a family court judge. "You son of a bitch," Marcus whispered. Now. Let's keep this civil." Victor's tone remained pleasant. "Especially since we're discussing your daughter's future." The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Elena half rose from her chair, her face murderous. "What does that mean?" Marcus asked, though he dreaded the answer. "It means that a family court judge, presented with evidence of a father involved in corporate espionage, might question his fitness as a guardian. Especially when that father's emotional instability has already affected his child's academic performance." Victor pulled out another document, a copy of Layla's recent report card. "Poor grades, behavioral concerns noted by teachers. Classic signs of a child suffering from parental neglect." Marcus felt the world spinning. "You're threatening my daughter." "I'm pointing out facts." Your daughter deserves stability, Marcus. A home where she doesn't have to worry about Daddy's dangerous nighttime activities. Where she can get the tutoring she needs, the opportunities she deserves. What do you want? Marcus's voice came out as a rasp. Victor leaned back, victorious. I want you to walk away. Tonight. Stop whatever amateur investigation you think you're conducting, forget everything you think you've discovered, and go back to being what you've always been, invisible. And if I don't? Then tomorrow morning, copies of this evidence go to the Department of Children and Family Services. By afternoon, there'll be a court hearing about Layla's living situation. By next week, she'll be in foster care while you fight charges of corporate espionage and child endangerment. Marcus felt like he was drowning. You bastard. She's just a little girl. She's leverage, Victor said simply. And very effective leverage, I must say. Elena's voice cut through the room like a blade. Victor, if you touch that child. I'm not touching anyone, Elena. I'm simply ensuring Marcus understands the consequences of his choices. Victor stood, straightening his tie with casual arrogance. You have until tomorrow at noon to decide, Marcus. Your daughter's future, or Elena's corporate crusade. Choose wisely. After Victor left, Elena and Marcus sat in stunned silence. The folder of fabricated evidence lay open between them like a declaration of war. We can fight this, Elena said finally. Those photos are fake, the bank records are fabricated. With what? Time we don't have. Money I can't afford for lawyers? Marcus's voice was hollow. Elena, he's right. I can't risk Layla. I won't. So you're walking away? Marcus looked at the woman he'd grown to love, at the evidence of crimes that would destroy thousands of families, at the choice that would define what kind of man he was. I don't know, he admitted. God help me, I don't know. Marcus spent the night staring at his ceiling, Victor's ultimatum echoing in his mind like a death sentence. By dawn, he'd made his choice. He kissed a sleepy Layla goodbye, told Mrs. Patterson he might be late getting home, and walked into Torres Industries carrying a flash drive that contained either Victor's destruction or his own. The emergency board meeting had been called for 2 p.m. Elena had texted him, board meeting tomorrow. Victor's pushing for my removal as CEO. It's now or never. Marcus had replied with a single word, ready. The boardroom on the 45th floor was a temple of corporate power, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River, a mahogany table that could seat 20, and portraits of company founders whose stern faces seemed to judge everyone who entered. 12 board members were already seated when Marcus arrived, their expensive suits and practiced expressions making him acutely aware that he was wearing his only good shirt and a tie Layla had helped him pick out. Victor sat at the far end of the table, radiating confidence. When he saw Marcus enter, his smile was predatory. Elena, Victor said smoothly. I wasn't aware we'd be having guests at this executive session. Elena stood at the head of the table, every inch the commanding CEO. Mr. Carter has information relevant to our discussion about corporate security and financial oversight. How interesting, Victor replied. Though I should mention that Mr. Carter is currently under investigation for embezzlement. Perhaps we should question the reliability of any information he might provide. Murmurs rippled around the table. Marcus felt 12 pairs of eyes assessing him, calculating his worth, finding him wanting. These people lived in Victor's world, spoke his language, understood his rules. Actually, Marcus said, his voice steadier than he felt, I'm here to discuss Victor's embezzlement, not my alleged involvement in crimes I didn't commit. Victor's smile never wavered. Marcus, you're clearly under stress. Financial pressure, custody concerns, your daughter's academic struggles. It's understandable that you might say anything to deflect attention from your own legal problems. The mention of Layla sent ice through Marcus's veins, but it also crystallized his resolve. This man had threatened his daughter. That was unforgivable. Let's talk about Brighton Consulting Services, Marcus said, connecting his laptop to the projection system. A company that received $300,000 for strategic analysis of Torres Industries' cancelled Seattle expansion. I'm familiar with Brighton Consulting, Victor said calmly. Excellent work, as I recall. Excellent for a company that doesn't exist. Marcus clicked to his first slide, a map showing Brighton's registered address. This is a parking lot in Detroit. Has been for 3 years. The room grew quieter. Board members leaned forward, suddenly paying attention. Or perhaps Vector Construction Solutions. Marcus continued, clicking to the next slide. 4 payments of $47,500 each, for construction work on our Milwaukee project. Except our Milwaukee project uses Brennan Construction exclusively, and Vector Construction's business license belongs to a defunct flower shop. Victor's confident mask slipped almost imperceptibly. Marcus, these accusations are documented with bank records, forged invoices, and digital signatures that forensic analysis will prove were created using Victor's company laptop. Marcus clicked through slide after slide of evidence, his accountant's precision turning Victor's careful crimes into undeniable facts. This is absurd, Victor said, his voice rising. Elena, surely you don't believe these conspiracy theories from a disgruntled employee facing criminal charges? Elena stood, commanding the room's attention. Actually, Victor, I believe every word. Because I've spent 3 weeks verifying Mr. Carter's findings. Marcus clicked to their final slide, a comprehensive summary showing 43 fraudulent transactions totaling $12.3 million over 18 months. $12.3 million, Elena announced to the stunned boardroom. Stolen from this company through shell companies, all traced back to accounts controlled by Victor Hale. This is a setup. Victor exploded, his composure cracking completely. Elena's been planning this for months. She recruited Carter, coached him, probably paid him to fabricate evidence because she wants me gone. Actually, Marcus said quietly, she recruited me because I used to be a forensic accountant. Before my wife died and I lost everything trying to save her. Before I became invisible enough for you to ignore while you stole millions. Board member Janet Patterson leaned forward with sharp interest. Mr. Carter, you're claiming to be a certified public accountant? Was. Lost my license when I couldn't afford continuing education after Sarah's medical bills bankrupted us. Marcus met her gaze steadily. But I remember how to follow money trails. And Victor's trail leads to the Cayman Islands. Victor stood abruptly, his chair scraping against marble. I don't have to listen to this character assassination. Sit down, Victor. The voice belonged to Robert Chin, the board's chairman. Mr. Carter, please continue. Marcus clicked to a final screen. Wire transfer records, account balances. Victor's been transferring stolen funds to Meridian Holdings in the Cayman Islands. An account opened 18 months ago, the same week the first fraudulent payment was processed. That's enough. Victor slammed his hand on the table. Elena, I demand you stop this circus. Elena's smile was ice cold. I'm fulfilling my fiduciary duty to this board and our shareholders. Your shareholders? Victor's laugh was ugly. You mean your daddy's legacy? This company should have been mine. I've done the real work while you played dress-up CEO. The admission hung in the air like a confession. Several board members exchanged meaningful glances. So you admit it, Elena said quietly. Victor realized what he'd revealed, but it was too late. I admit that I deserve better than watching you inherit everything. You've been stealing, Marcus said simply. From employees, from families who depend on Torres Industries. Prove it in court. Victor snarled. Take your fabricated evidence, and see how far it gets when I expose Elena's vendetta, your criminal background. Victor. Robert Chen's voice cut through the tirade. Security is waiting to escort you from the building. Your access is suspended pending full investigation. You can't do this. I have contracts. You have the right to remain silent, Elena said coolly. As security officers entered, Victor turned his fury on Marcus one final time. This isn't over, Carter. You think you've won? You've destroyed your daughter's future. You have nothing. Marcus replied, standing. Nothing but stolen money and empty threats. As Victor was escorted out, still hurling accusations, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years: the satisfaction of fighting for justice and winning. Truth had prevailed, but Marcus knew Victor's final words carried weight. This victory was just the beginning. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in Elena's office wearing a new navy blue suit, not a tuxedo this time, but proper business attire that Elena had insisted the company purchase for his new role. The temporary nameplate on his desk read, Marcus Carter, Director of Financial Integrity. A title that still felt surreal every time he saw it. Victor's removal had moved swiftly once the FBI took over the investigation. The shell companies unraveled like a house of cards, revealing not just the $12.3 million stolen from Torres Industries, but connections to 2 other companies where Victor had pulled similar schemes. He was currently in federal custody, awaiting trial on 18 counts of wire fraud, money laundering, and racketeering. The man who'd threatened Layla's future now faced 25 years in federal prison. The board approved your permanent appointment this morning, Elena announced, sliding a contract across her desk. Full benefits, retirement plan, and a salary that should cover Layla's tutoring with plenty left over. Marcus picked up the contract, scanning numbers that represented security he hadn't felt in years. The salary was more than double what he made as a janitor, with health insurance that would actually cover Layla's needs. Elena, this is generous, but I need to know, is this offer because of what we accomplished together, or because of what we mean to each other? Elena smiled, the kind of expression that had been appearing more frequently since Victor's arrest. Can it be both? I need to know you're hiring Marcus Carter the accountant, not just a man you've grown fond of. Marcus. Elena came around her desk, perching on the edge directly in front of him. You exposed the largest corporate fraud in Torres Industries history. You saved 12,000 jobs and protected millions in shareholder investments. You did that with nothing but determination and a laptop. Any company in Chicago would be lucky to have you. And the personal stuff? Elena's expression grew tender. The personal stuff is separate. That's about the man who makes me laugh during 15-hour days, who talks about his daughter like she hung the stars, who returned a stolen ring because it was the right thing to do. That's about falling in love with someone I respect completely. Before Marcus could respond, a small voice from the office doorway interrupted them. Daddy? They turned to see Layla standing in the entrance, wearing her school uniform and clutching a certificate in her small hands. Mrs. Patterson appeared behind her, looking apologetic. I'm sorry, the elderly woman said. The school called saying Layla had won something, and she insisted on coming to show you immediately. The security guard said it was okay. It's more than okay, Elena said, standing up with a warm smile. Layla, what did you win? Layla stepped into the office, her initial shyness dissolving as she spotted Marcus. Daddy, I won the math competition. First place in the whole 4th grade. She thrust the certificate toward him, beaming with pride. Marcus's heart swelled as he read the Golden Boss certificate. Layla, this is incredible. I'm so proud of you. Mrs. Johnson said my improvement over the past month has been remarkable. Layla continued, practically bouncing with excitement. She said I went from struggling to excelling, and she wanted to know what changed. Marcus caught Elena's eye over Layla's head. What had changed was his stress level, his ability to focus on being a father instead of worrying about bills and Victor's threats. What had changed was hope. You know what changed? Marcus said, kneeling down to Layla's level. You got the tutoring you needed, and you worked incredibly hard. This certificate belongs to you, sweetheart. The tutoring you got me after you helped catch the bad man, Layla said matter-of-factly. Mrs. Patterson told me you were like a detective, helping to stop someone who was stealing money. Marcus glanced at Mrs. Patterson, who shrugged unapologetically. The girl asked questions. I gave her age-appropriate answers. You stopped a real bad guy. Layla's eyes were wide with admiration. Like a superhero? Not like a superhero, Marcus said, pulling her into a hug. just like a dad who wanted to do the right thing. Layla squeezed him tight, then pulled back to look at Elena. Are you the pretty lady from the party? Elena laughed, kneeling down beside Marcus. I am. Your daddy told me you want to be a marine biologist. I'm going to save the coral reefs, Layla said with the absolute confidence of childhood, and discover new fish species. Did you know there are probably thousands of fish we haven't found yet? I didn't know that, Elena said seriously. That sounds like incredibly important work. As Layla launched into an enthusiastic explanation of ocean conservation, Marcus watched Elena listen with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions and responding to his daughter's passion with respect rather than condescension. The sight of them together, his brilliant daughter and the woman he'd fallen in love with, filled him with a contentment he'd thought he'd lost forever. Layla, Mrs. Patterson said gently, we should let your father get back to work. Actually, Elena said, standing up, my workday just ended. Marcus, would you and Layla like to get dinner? I know a place that has excellent fish and chips, and I'd love to hear more about coral reef conservation. Layla looked up at Marcus with hopeful eyes. Can we, Daddy? Please? Marcus looked at his daughter's excited face, at Elena's warm smile, at the contract on the desk that represented a future he'd stopped believing was possible. 6 months ago, he'd been a broken man cleaning offices and counting pennies. Tonight, he was having dinner with his daughter and the woman he loved, celebrating Layla's academic success and his own professional redemption. Yes, he said, surprising himself with how easy the word came. We can. As they prepared to leave, Elena caught Marcus's hand. Are you happy? She asked quietly. Marcus looked around the office that had become the staging ground for their investigation, then at Layla, who was chattering excitedly about restaurant choices, then at Elena, whose eyes held promises of a future he'd never dared imagine. I'm getting there, he said, squeezing her hand. For the first time in 3 years, I'm getting there. Outside Elena's office windows, Chicago sparkled in the evening light, the same city where Marcus had once lost everything, where he'd struggled to rebuild from nothing, where he'd learned that sometimes the most unlikely partnerships could save you from yourself. Victor Hale was gone, his threats neutralized, his crimes exposed. Torres Industries was safe, its 12,000 employees secure in their jobs. And Marcus Carter, former CPA, former janitor, current director of financial integrity, was walking toward a future that included both his daughter's laughter and Elena Torres's love. Some fairy tales, Marcus realized, were worth the risk of believing in them. As they rode the elevator down together, Marcus, Elena, and Layla, who was still clutching her math competition certificate, he felt something he hadn't experienced since Sarah's death, complete and absolute hope. The elevator doors opened onto the lobby, and the three of them stepped out together into whatever came next.